Welcome to Sunday Assembly Nashville, coming to you virtually here on a Sunday morning. This is Steven. I'd like to welcome you to the morning. We're going to start off with a song here called Hot Water.
A one, a two, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
There's a green versus greenbacks rift in the world today over a 2-degree centigrade shift that's coming our way.
The consequences may never be known while the cash machine holds the megaphone.
And the light is coming out of those lips, turn the black and white gray.
Can't wait, risk our fate. If we open our eyes too late, we will surely see ocean swallowing the island change, crops drying up for a drop of rain, wasteland in the wake of a hurricane. Nowhere to run and nothing to eat. Refugees in the ransacked streets, coming to a boil. Can't you feel the heat? We're in hot water. Hot water. This state of urgency isn't red or blue. Take care of religious belief, doesn't cloud your view. We're never gonna find a way out of this fix if we leave it up to gods and politics.
Planet Earth's destiny is up to me and you.
Tick, tick, tock, tock, goes a temperature clock. If the hands don't stop, time runs out.
to our children and generations to come. So we look back and grieve, wistful and bewildered, when our days here are done.
The time is now to say what
This magical place, this beautiful blue dot. From ocean swallowing the island chains, crops crying out for a drop of rain, wastelands in the wake of a hurricane. Nowhere to run, nothing to eat, refugees in the ransacked streets, coming to a boil. Can't you feel the heat? We're in hot water. Hot water.
Hey there, welcome to Sunday Assembly. My name is Melissa. I'll be your host today. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are, in your PJs with your breakfast or your quarantine snacks. What is Sunday Assembly? The Sunday Assembly is a secular organization that celebrates life. Our motto is live better, help often, wonder more. Our mission is to help everyone find and fulfill their full potential. Our vision is a secular congregation in every town, city, and village that once won. We're 100% celebration of life. We are born from nothing. We go back from nothing. Let's enjoy it together. We have no doctrine. We have no set text, so we can make use of wisdom from all sources. We have no deity. We don't do the supernatural, but we won't tell you you're wrong if you do. We're radically inclusive. Everyone is welcome regardless of their beliefs. This is a place of love that is open and accepting. We're free to attend. We're not for profit and volunteer run. We ask for donations to cover our costs and support our community work. We have a community mission. There are our action heroes. We will be a force for good. We are independent. We are here to stay. With your involvement, the Sunday Assembly will make the world a better place. We won't tell you how to live, but we will try to help you do it as best as you can. And remember point one, the Sunday Assembly is a celebration of life, the one life we know we have. And our theme today is climate change and the carbon problem and solutions. We know we have one life, but we're aware of what we're leaving behind for our children and our future generations. And while we hear a lot of what we can do as individuals, reduce, reuse, recycle, reusable bags, paper straws, a lot needs to be on a larger scale to really make our voices heard. So right now we have our reader today is Georgia. She's going to read Characteristics of Life by Camille T. Dungy.
Ask me if I speak for the snail, and I will tell you I speak for the snail. Speak of underneathedness and the welcome of mosses, of life that springs up, little lives that pull back and wait for a moment. I speak for the damselfly, water skeet, mollusk, the caterpillar, the beetle, the spider, the ant. I speak from the time before spinelessness was frowned upon. Ask me if I speak for the moon jelly. I will tell you one thing today and another tomorrow, and I will be as consistent as anything alive on this earth. I move as the currents move, with the breezes. What part of your nature drives you? You in your cubicle ought to understand me. I filter and filter and filter all day. Ask me if I speak for the Nautilus, and I will be as silent as the Nautilus shell on a shelf. I can be beautiful and useless, if that's all you know to ask of me. Ask me what I know of longing, and I will speak of distances between meadows of night-blooming flowers. I will speak the impossible hope of the firefly. You with the candle burning and only one chair at your table must understand such wordless desire. To say it is mindless is missing the point.
Thank you for that, Georgia. Now we have our speaker today is Lynn Jobe from the Nashville chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. Lynn Jobe is originally from a rural farm in Tennessee. He has been interested in climate change since 2003 and joined Citizens Climate Lobby, or CCL, as a volunteer in 2015 and has lobbied with CCL and DC on 5 occasions. Lynn has continued to engage with others to build momentum toward passage of meaningful legislation to curb carbon emissions and to address the climate crisis. Take it away, Lynn.
Sometimes we need a law. Sometimes the system in place just does not meet the needs of a just society. All the concerned citizens of the 60s, bundled together, could not give civil rights to Black Americans. To do that, we needed a law that all had to abide by. We needed a law because the system was broken. Next slide. Today, we have a broken system also. This chart is of carbon dioxide concentration in our atmosphere. It is now 400 parts per million and started out around 270 parts per million at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Going back a long way, even before Homo sapiens roamed the earth, we are now living at a level beyond any of that time, as you can see from the chart. This is because we are dumping inordinate amount of carbon dioxide, burned fossil fuel, if you will, into our atmosphere. We all talk about the climate crisis. In the United States, a utility or a corporation, or anyone from that matter, can dump as much carbon dioxide into the air as they wish, with no penalty whatsoever. Next slide. There are libraries of books, peer-reviewed books, on the topic of climate change and what's causing it. I will only show this one graph. And you can see temperature, you can see carbon dioxide, they relate together very well. What's happening is the Earth's temperature is increasing rapidly because humans are dumping carbon dioxide into the air. Next slide. We are on firm foundation to say that climate change is caused by people's activities. I worked as a young engineer for NASA in the 60s. These organizations have people just like you and I. They go to work every day. They do the job the best they know how. They are in service to the American citizens. There is no hidden agenda. There is no reason to try to deceive the public. It's just quite the opposite. And they're all saying that climate change is a threat to a livable Earth. Take NOAA as an example, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. They provide the underpinnings for all the hurricane forecasts that we see. I used to live on the coast. We trusted what they were telling us in terms of, do we stay in our home? Do we evacuate? These are huge atmospheric events, and they have the knowledge to understand them. We should also understand that when they talk about climate change and they say it's a problem and a threat to a livable Earth, it's an atmospheric situation, and we should trust what they say. Next slide. Earth Day 1971. At the time, people were more concerned about trash than global warming. I trust you can see the connection. Porcupine says, it's hard walking on this stuff. Pogo poetically responds, yep, son, we have met the enemy, and he is us. Us indeed. US, United States. Maybe we're part of the problem. Maybe it's us. Maybe it's we. Maybe we're not doing as much as we should or could. Next slide. In fact, the next asteroid may be us. The last great asteroid killed all the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. It was the 5th significant massive extinction on the Earth. And now scientists are talking about the 6th extinction caused in part by global warming. In a manner of speaking, this asteroid, in quotes, is us unless we change our ways. Next slide. This is a statement from the International Panel on Climate Change, made in 2018. The International Panel on Climate Change, if you don't know, is part of our United Nations. And it was actually created in the public administration, the senior Bush years. And they were tasked to study global warming, its causes, and make reports from time to time on what we might do about it. And this 2018 report says, capping at 1.5 degrees C, 1.5 to 2 degrees C is considered a reasonably safe zone to be. We're at 1 degree C increase now. But capping at 1.5 will require a reduction in global greenhouse gas emissions to near zero by 2050. So just pause a second and think about that last part of that sentence, to near zero by 2050. Think of all the things you touch every day, your neighbor touches every day, that puts carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. 30 years from now, if we want to be in a safe zone, it needs to go to near zero. Next slide. This says the similar thing a little bit different way. This is the amount of carbon that we currently know about that must not be burned to stay below 2 degrees C, or in this 1.5 to 2 degree zone. So the known extractable carbon that resides on the ledgers, and the books, if you will, corporations across America, 82% of the coal, 49% of the gas, and 33% of the oil cannot be burned if we wish to stay below 2 degrees C. You can imagine there's a lot of folks that want to mine this material, and then we'll end up burning it. It's going to take a lot of us to stand in the way to prevent that from happening. Next slide. But some folks are trying, and they're trying mightily. It is not like nothing is happening. We do have the Paris Agreement of 2015. Unbelievably, 195 nations assembled and agreed to each other on what they would do to stop their carbon emissions. It was not enough to stay below 2 degrees C, but it certainly was more than symbolism. Next slide. This graph demonstrates kind of the situation. The orange line shows what's happening now, if you will, what's happening in 2015. We are going up the orange line and probably exceeding 4 degrees C, but maybe significantly. And the plans that they put together, called the national plans in blue on this graph, took us down to 3.3. That's a pretty good step. That's a pretty good chunk. And they also talked about future meetings where let's talk about being in this 1.5 to 2 degrees C zone at future conferences. Next slide. I think most of you probably aware that one nation declines to help. One nation announced its withdrawal, even though we are currently second in annual CO2 emissions worldwide. And of the total CO2 that exists in our atmosphere today, 1/3 of it is attributed to activity in the United States. We are number one when it comes to CO2 emissions per person. Checking out of the Paris Agreement means that the United States has lost the moral authority to deal with this issue globally or tell anyone what to do. We will have to do something significant to regain capital, if you will, to be able to influence this issue. And I think most people understand any big issue around the world needs United States leadership if we really want to fix it. Next slide. So what can we do? Next slide. Well, we can take individual action, and all these actions are good. I'll let you read a few if you wish. All of them reduce greenhouse gases, and they help us and our neighbors to remain mindful of the situation that we're in. It feels good to do our part, and we should continue to do so. But we should also understand that these activities are like training before a marathon. It is good and helpful, but it is still training. We must realize that these actions by concerned citizens, all bundled together, is not enough. It's not nearly enough. Next slide. We need a law. To begin to heal the planet, we must stop putting carbon dioxide in the air in these huge quantities. There is no workaround, and there is no alternative. We need a law. The system that's in place today does not allow for a just society. We can bundle all our concerns, those of us that are concerned, bundled together. It will not give a livable planet to our children and grandchildren. So, with all the talk about climate change and the science of it is known, what's missing? Next slide. Yeah, so what's missing? Well, in my mind, it's enough people who get it. Here's a woman, she's looking at the internet, she's doing research, she finally makes some connections, and she says, my kids are cooked. Next slide. Here's a graph to kind of demonstrate the point. This is done by Yale University. They've been doing surveys about climate change for, I think, about 10 years now, several years anyway. And this question is, ask of all adults, or enough adults to do a survey, is global warming happening? And you can see 67% say yes. If the color is tan, it means 50% of the people or more are saying that it's happening. If it's blue, 50% or less are saying it's happening, and the color intensifies on both sides. So we in America are saying, yeah, climate change or global warming is happening. Next slide. And now the world turns blue. All the counties, almost all the counties are blue. The question is, will global warming harm me personally? So we think it's happening, but we think, well, maybe it won't harm me. So that's the thing that is a little bit disappointing. To really get this to happen in a way to get a law, probably more of us need to feel like it's going to affect me personally. Next slide. When we do get that, we need to have the courage to speak. We need to speak to our neighbors. We need to speak within our work organizations, our civic organizations. And we need to speak to our members of Congress. Political will comes from us, the people. It doesn't come from senators or representatives. They do more surveys than you can imagine on what we think or what they can get by with without making us angry. We create the political will. Next slide. Fortunately, some good people are speaking, and they're speaking about the climate crisis. And they have a good idea on how to fix it, at least take a big step in a positive direction. It's Citizens Climate Lobby. And there's other organizations as well. There's other good organizations that are doing good work. This group is about 1,000 people or more standing on the steps of the Capitol getting ready to lobby all members of Congress. I'm in that a picture somewhere. Next slide. And their idea has been turned into a bill in the 116th Congress, the current Congress that's in place. It's called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And if you want to look it up online, the easiest way to do it is to just type in HR, H.R. 763, House Resolution 763, and you can read about the bill. But in broad strokes, which I will tell you about, the idea is to place a fee on carbon, that thing that's creating our problem. Place a fee on carbon as it comes out of the earth at the point of extraction, at the mine, at the oil well, or at port of entry. All that money is collected, it goes to our treasury, and it comes back to us, all of it, in the form of a check on a per person basis. Take the money, divide by the number of people, that's the amount check that you get every month. Next slide. More specifics, it starts at $15 a ton of CO2 produced from this pile of oil or pile of coal. And then it goes up every year after that, $10 a ton. So second year is 25, third year it's 35. You can imagine what would happen if industry, commercial organizations, entrepreneurs know that carbon fuel is becoming more and more expensive. They quit investing in it. It dries up completely. They began to do other things. They began to work on solar or wind or batteries or power lines that are more conducive to transmitting energy from solar energy, which is possible. And so things changed dramatically. They began to change. All the net revenue comes to us, the people. And to protect our industry in this country, we have a border adjustment. So if some other country doesn't do the same thing, then we're protected. And the cool thing, and the most important thing, is CO2 goes down by 90% by law in this legislation. And there are adjustments to make sure that it does by 2050, which is consistent with IPCC's estimate that we need to be near zero at that time. Next slide. This is the graph. The green dots show CO2 coming down dramatically. This is what's in the legislation. And as I said, there's an adjustment made if we don't achieve those targets every year. The dotted line underneath, called the RFF model, is what a third party says they think will happen if we pass this legislation. In fact, it's better than what the legislation says it must do. Next slide. Some people are concerned about the economy. Well, gasoline goes up, the economy goes in the tank. It's not true, according to people that are studying this, that know what they're doing. In fact, employment goes up versus the do-nothing case. 2.1 million jobs at year 10. It also saves lives because of people that have respiratory problems and mostly the pollution from coal, from utilities. Family of four gets about $3,400 a year. In fact, the way this legislation works is people, about 66% of us on the lower economic scale, will receive more money back in the dividend than we will pay in increased fees and expenses associated with putting a price on carbon. This program does not solve the problem on the backs of the poor. It naturally protects the poor because they have traditionally a lower carbon footprint. Next slide. There are also, so that's all in the House. That's all in the House. There is some activity recently in the Senate as well. There is a group called the Senate Climate Solutions Caucus. They are holding hearings. This past year, or this year, they have held several hearings. There are 7 Republicans, might be a surprise to some folks, and 7 Democrats, and their names are listed there, on this caucus. And they are working on what can we do to solve this problem. There is also a bill in the Senate. It's only sponsored by Democrats currently, but nevertheless, it does, if implemented into law, do something similar to HR 763. So we have activity, even today's political climate, in both houses. Unfortunately, we've seen little interest from our president. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit more about putting a price on carbon. This is a graph produced by the University of Texas in Austin. It shows, it's a graph for no price on carbon, not a graph, but a map. And it's analyzing, if I were to make an investment today as a utility and I wanted to give the cheapest power possible to my customers, what energy system would I invest in? So this is an investment today, not an operating cost today, an investment today. And you can see in the middle of the country, green is wind. We have a lot of wind in the middle of the country. That would be the cheapest thing to do. In the Southwest, you can see a lot of purple. That's solar. In the Southeast, you see tan. That is natural gas. So let's put a price on carbon and see what happens. Next slide. If I put a $50 price per ton on carbon, which is year 5 for the legislation I talked about, HR 763, you can see the Southwest is now all purple. So the best thing to do if I'm an investor and I want cheap energy for my customers is I should put in a solar system. In Midwest, the green has grown. It's bigger now than it was before. And in the Southeast, a lot of the tan has gone away. Next slide. If I go to $100 a ton, essentially all the United States, if you wanted to make an investment on the best energy system for your customer, it would be either wind or solar. So indeed, a price on carbon does the kind of thing we want it to do. It takes away carbon dioxide from our atmosphere, which is the only thing, the most important thing that we can do to stop the climate crisis. Next slide. There is no moral middle ground in my thinking on this issue. You cannot be neutral. No action or inaction leads to the left. It takes effort, it takes advocacy if we want to go to the right. Our history tells us, even though we have a big problem today, our history tells us that when folks in the United States get together on an issue and they understand it, we solve the problem. In our recent history, World War II is an example. The Civil Rights Act is an example. Landing a man on the moon and returning him safely is an example. Indeed, even the virus issue today is an example of Americans banding together and do what's necessary to remain safe. And Congress has acted as well, passed huge amounts of money to try to solve this problem. So we can fix this if we just get enough of us involved. Next slide. We can still make a safe handoff next slide. If there exist people who get it. Now she's changed her mind. Her kids aren't cooked anymore. She knows about HR 763. I'm voting to save my kids. And we have the courage to speak. Speak out, speak up. You don't have to get in an argument. Just understand enough about it to be able to speak on the topic. And we have enough members in Congress and a president who will vote a bill, a good bill, into law. Our voice matters. The election in 2020 really matters. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Lynn. Don't have many questions coming in from YouTube. I forgot to ask for that. We put that in the comments though. On the individual slide, you had some things like investing in solar. There was something at the end was like divest of fossil fuel stock. Do you have any information on that to like how we would go about doing that if it's something like tied in with our 401ks or something like that? Is that what that ending meant? That's the only thing I wasn't sure on.
Yes, that's exactly what that means. I mean, I have a little bit of money in savings from my IRA. I call my financial manager. I say, you know, I don't want any of my stuff invested in oil, gas, et cetera, stocks.
Okay.
He pushed back a little bit at first,
yeah,
but eventually he got the message. No, that's not what I want.
Yeah, because the other things seem kind of self-explanatory, but that was one that
that's exactly what it means.
Of, if you have something like that. Nobody. We'll try to get the information on the bill on our social media website so that we can, if anybody wants to join or learn how to participate and vote for that. You did say that the decrease in carbon, the plan wouldn't increase our cost, or it would be offset by that. So I think we're good there.
Yes, that's correct.
As a question for you. Oh, hang on.
Melissa?
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question for Lynn.
Okay, go ahead.
Lynn, do you think that the fact of the matter of the COVID-19 epidemic is indication of how when we reduce driving around, when we reduce those emissions, and how that do you feel that has changed in some way for our climate right now?
Yeah, yes. It's not going to do any long-term changing, I don't think, because I'm imagining things will go back fairly quickly to the way we were before. But I think what it has demonstrated, and I've read some articles on this, in certain places that there is a lot of air pollution. They can track this very, very directly. Deaths have gone down as a result because of people breathing pollution. So that has happened. People can see by satellite, for example, in some places in China, that the NOx emissions are significantly down from where they were before just because of limited industrial activity or driving of cars. So it is kind of an experiment in a way in that regard. I think the other way is an experiment, and it tells us some things that maybe we already knew, but more graphically can now see it. We can band together and we can get Congress to act. We just have to have more of an intensity about the issue, and more people need to be involved. It was pretty obvious with people dying that Congress needed to do something. We needed to make it more obvious that climate change is just around the corner. Right now, they don't have an appetite to work on climate change. I wouldn't write my congressman so much about that at the moment, but we need to be prepared in the future to do so once we get back to near normal.
Okay. Thank you for that answer, Lynn. We have a question from YouTube is how do you get people to understand and believe when their worldview is dependent on the destruction of the earth and deflecting responsibility? So like you said, the Congress is not ready to hear that right now, but how would you go about
I don't worry about trying to convince those folks, okay? I think the strategy needs to be we have to overwhelm those folks in a way. And I don't mean to go out with in some crazy way. I just mean the avenue to fix this has got to be through our Congress and our president. That is the only avenue. Everyone must be involved if we want CO2 to be as low as it needs to be. The concern of us will not be enough to fix the problem. So enough of us must advocate. We must understand the issue well enough that we can advocate. And you can advocate your representative by saying simply, I'm concerned about climate change and I want you to do something about it. You don't have to have all the math and all the science to be able to do at least that. But that's the avenue. I wouldn't try to change an oil man's mind on whether he wants to drill or not. I don't think that's the avenue.
Okay. All right, let me see if we have anybody else asking a question. All right, so I don't think there's too many more questions. If you have questions, just go ahead and leave them in YouTube, or if you're on our social media pages, you can leave questions there and we'll try to get the answers for you. Right now, then, we're gonna have our moment of mindfulness. So this has been a lot of information. Just take a deep breath. Just think about your place in the world. Think on everything that was said of what you can do as an individual and in a group on climate change, and file those thoughts on where you can help. And right now we will go back to the band. They'll be playing 2 songs for us. So
I'd like to take a second here before we start the next song. I wanted to thank Jason, Steven, Clayton, Georgia, everybody who has been involved in this undertaking of doing online technology. This has been like a wizardry that I'll never be able to wrap my mind around it, but they do this all for free and from their hearts. And I just wanted to recognize them because they've put in a lot of time and effort. So yay to you guys. The next 2 songs that we're going to do were written by myself and my co-writer, Scott Tabicman. Hey, Scott, hope you're out there listening. We're breaking a virtual leg, just like you said. So, okay, well, let's start the next one. It's a kind of like a nursery rhyme feel. Hopefully I won't be singing this to my grandchildren in 10, 20 years from now. Hopefully Lynn has got us inspired to do all we can to make a change, and things will go much better for mankind. All right, let's do Rhyme for a Reason, Georgia and Steven.
I'm not seeking why the willow's weeping. Easy turn the face away. I see mountains collapsing into fountains. Burning turns the green to gray. Care for the land falls in our hands. Don't put them over your dreams. No, don't put them over your ears. Listen to the earth as she tries to sing, pushing through her tears and her suffering. You can't know, no, you can't begin till you listen to the earth. Mother, the burrow owl is calling, the moose will keep on walking. Further north, the spirit is more emissions, turn up the air condition. Naysayers say to pay no mind. But the land falls in our hands. Don't put them over your dreams. Don't put them over your dreams. Listen to the earth as she tries to sing, pushing through the tears and the suffering. You can't know, no, you can't begin till you listen to the earth. Mother, rhyme for reason. Can you hear the woeful sound of the season out of tune? Time for slowing this thing down, turn it around. Then when we listen to the earth, we will hear her sing songs with no more tears, no more suffering. Then we'll all go, then we'll all begin when we listen to the earth. Mother, listen to the earth. Mother,
One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
While you were seeking Eden and utopia, the earth was falling apart. Focused on clouds, promising euphoria, destination depart. But there's no one raising you high above. Here there's a fire below. I wonder what on earth will tow. Well, hell no, there ain't no hell. Look for some heaven in yourself. Give a damn about the land and all the people around you. Do your best, and the rest of us will just try to do what's right. Maybe even be nice, and we'll call that paradise. Paradise. While you were reading promises and prophecies, the planet started to cook. Justice, luscious paradise, guaranteed prayer was all that it took.
Yes, even, but you know there's no one treating you with this love. You global burners on low. You wonder what on earth will we do?
Where in hell will we go? Well, hell no, there ain't no hell. Look for some heaven in yourself. Give a damn about the land and all the people around you. Do your best, and the rest of us will just try to do what's right. Make a sacrifice, and we'll call it paradise. Paradise.
Take it away, Scott. Woohoo!
Well, hell no, there ain't no hell. Look for some heaven in yourself. Give a damn about the land and all the people around you. Do your best, and the rest of us will just try to do what's right. Wouldn't that be nice? We would call that paradise. Paradise. Paradise.
All right, thank you for those wonderful original songs. Right now we're Trying My Best with Felicia. Trying My Best is our spot where a member talks about a moment or something in their life that has made them think. So we welcome our very own Felicia.
Hello, good morning. 1, polyethylene terephthalate. 2, high density polyethylene. 3, polyvinyl chloride. 4, low density polyethylene. 5, polypropylene. 6, polystyrene. 3 and 6 are the worst. 5 is my favorite. Don't get me started on 7. 13 years ago, all of those words became incredibly important to me because I had become a mother. I was overjoyed and I went overboard. All I wanted to be when I was younger was a mom when I grew up. Some girls want to grow up and be a teacher or a businesswoman, and I need to slow down my teleprompter. Hold up. This is really hard to do. So back to the story. As I approached puberty, my doctor at the time had told me that as a diabetic person, I could not safely be pregnant or have a baby. It wouldn't be safe for me or said baby. And that kind of broke my heart. Like it killed all my dreams. And that sucked. I don't know if anybody has ever told you in a medical way that all of your dreams must never come true. I don't recommend it at all. But in the time that transpired between then and when I met Mr. Felicia 5 days after my 30th birthday, medical treatment had advanced so much that I was able to have a completely healthy baby, and pregnancy and delivery, and it was uncomplicated. And my son is the physical manifestation of all of my hopes and dreams that came true. And all of a sudden, taking care of the planet, taking care of the earth became this crazy important thing for me. And I grew obsessed, just completely obsessed in a really unhealthy way. I learned about all of the toxins that I could. I worried about the phthalates that were leaching out of our water bottles and my son's baby bottles. I cloth diapered him. I tossed out all of our Teflon pans and replaced them with all cast iron, because why just cook when you can also get a workout, right? I made myself crazy with it. I have a perfectionist nature that kind of got in the driver's seat and took over, because I had to protect this tiny, defenseless person that depended on me for everything completely. And so I made changes, a lot of huge changes in the way that we lived. And I washed the diapers and I put them back on my baby's bottom, and I bottle nursed my son with ridiculously heavy glass baby bottles that were really difficult to hold in the middle of the night. And I was obsessed with it, but doing a good job at reducing my family's level of toxic exposure and carbon footprint made me feel like I was doing a good job as being a wife and mother. I really wanted to trade in our Jeep. I felt so embarrassed to be driving a huge gas guzzler, but it was the only car that fit all of our family, including our 2 large dogs, for road trips. And we really loved road trips with our whole family. So I begrudgingly kept the Jeep and just figured, well, at least I have 4x4 for the snow, because we lived in Chicago at the time. And I did all that religiously. I kept it up for nearly a decade. And then my dad died, and part of my brain broke. And all of a sudden, being the queen of being green was just no longer a realistic expectation for me to have of myself. I had to reframe what being a good wife and mom meant realistically. And realistically, that meant that my goal every day was to keep everyone alive. And the seasoning on my favorite frying pan got messed up, and I just couldn't rally to scour and re-season it. And I bought a new Teflon pan for eggs. And I felt so guilty. And keeping up with our reusable water bottles just was more mental labor than my broken brain could hold. And so sometimes we bought bottled water, and I was so full of self-loathing. It really made my grief process so much harder to deal with all of my guilt over failing to reduce my carbon footprint. After all, my son was depending on me. This is his future, the world that he's going to inherit. And it was such a huge responsibility to me. So part of my journey through grief meant learning how to give myself permission to not be perfect. that's really hard because of my nature and my personality. But I realized that I was living in a very unhealthy way. In my efforts to be super healthy and protect my child from all of the horrible toxins, I was living with this toxic mentality that was breaking my brain. And so I learned to give myself a little bit of grace and kind of had to go, well, planet's going to have to take one for the team today because I can't. And I learned that it's okay to do that. I still sometimes have to buy bottled water because dishes get away from me and we're just too busy in and out around the house and we end up with bottled water. But we try not to depend on it. I try and make other little choices like giving up buying these, which, like, if you know me, I always have a Powerade Zero because I am constantly dehydrated. But I recently discovered these. Look, it's like a little Crystal Light packet of Gatorade without sugar in it. So instead of this plastic waste, I can use this tiny packet, mix it up in my little reusable cup, and really reduce the amount of plastic that I'm consuming, because the truth is recycling as it currently stands is a far from perfect process and actually results in a lot of recyclable waste still landing in landfills. So as a result of that, I'm more passionate about reducing and reusing. And I do that whenever and wherever I can. And I still feel fulfilled and satisfied that I'm doing my part. I wanted to be a mom when I grew up. I wanted to be a really, really great mom. And I learned how to be proud of being the world's most okayest mom, because it's okay to not be perfect as long as we're all just trying our best. Thank you so much for letting me tell my story. If you have stories that you'd be willing to share, I would recommend contacting anyone on the Wondermore team, Teresa, Nicole, Dawn, Steven Phelps, any of those folks can hook you up with a date where you can get in front of your Sunday Assembly Nashville family and share your story too. So thanks so much, guys. I miss you so much.
Technology. Yay. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Felicia. And you are a perfect mom. We know you're awesome. That's just a lot of what you do. And I just want to thank for everybody who came to Sunday Assembly via their living rooms or wherever you're at today. We appreciate you taking this time out of your day. This is usually a time where we do announcements and hack passing. If you're on our Facebook group, we've been posting virtual meetups through Zoom and other platforms. So if you're on our Facebook or Facebook, we'll have information on how we're hosting game nights through Zoom or Discord areas. After this live, you can head over to our Facebook page and put like any comments there and join like a virtual potluck for us to give. You can become a sustaining member on our website. You can set it and forget it. Like I said, this is all volunteer run. We're not getting paid to do this, and this is just all to go toward when we do have physical meetings to pay for the rent for the space and other things that we do within the community. So you can make a one-time donation. If you want to get involved, when we do have meetings, we have childcare. You can contact the people that you see on your screen through our social media, production, tech crew. Tech Crew Music, get in touch with Steven, Live Better. It's just things if we have community members that need help and help often. As Kate Turner, we usually do a donation drive, which we're not doing this month, but I'll explain more on that later. And Wonder More is the committee that helps put all of this together and get speakers. If you want to join us, Nicole, Deidrich, or Teresa, Raphael, contact them. So right now we are on, oops, sorry. So right now we're all on, we're on Facebook. We do have Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, sorry. We have Sunday Assembly Nashville. So if you want to reach out there, join those hashtags, follow up what we're doing in the community. And right now we're all trying our best to get through this pandemic and navigating a new normal. Some of us aren't working, but we're looking for ways that we can help each other and also help like the climate change initiative, looking at things that we're doing in our house, whether it's reducing the amount of plastic bottles that we're unfortunately using because we're not driving out to get a drink from the gas station with our reusable cups. If you can take the time to look and join the Citizens Climate Lobby to write your legislator or get behind the bill that Mr. Lynn had talked about. What you can do as an individual, one of the things he on there was plant trees. If you can't do that because of HOA or you live in an apartment, there is a website called onetreeplanted.org, and that plants a tree anywhere. You can plant a tree in Australia to help with the Australia fires. You can plant it Amazon or places that just need to plant a tree in your area too. And so it's like $1 per tree or something small like that too. What you can do as an individual, like if you run to the grocery store and you forget your reusable bags, Felicia said you do it imperfectly. We don't need perfect people doing zero waste, 100% perfectly. We just need a handful of imperfect people doing it imperfectly. So just take the bags back to the recycling thing when you're done with them, reuse them in your own home, or we're doing a cleanup day. So since we can't get together, that's just going to be any day that you can get out in your neighborhood, pick up garbage and litters while practicing physical distancing, wear your mask, get gloves if you've got a grabber thing to grab the garbage as it's on the ground, and just make your neighborhood a bit brighter place and pick up the garbage that people are leaving around. Take a picture and tag Sunday Assembly Nashville on social media with the hashtag sand cleanup, and just let us know how you're doing your best to make our place a greener place. So thank you all for coming, and the band is going to take over now with another song.
Thank you, Melissa. You did a great job. This one's kind of become our closer for at least this period of time. Maybe we'll keep it on afterwards. Called I Believe in Good.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe in good. Oh, I believe in good. I believe in being good and doing good just for goodness sake. Good makes the whole world better. Good is great, and I believe in harmony. Respect for all humanity. I believe that we will find the only truth we need. Living this one life by this one creed. I believe in good. I believe in good. One more time for me. I believe in good. All sounds good. Oh, I believe in good. I believe in being good and doing good just for goodness sake. Good makes the whole world better. Good is great, and I believe in harmony. Respect for all humanity. I believe that we will find the only truth we
believe this.